Good afternoon. Let's see if we can get everybody to. Okay. Good afternoon. Marhaban. Thank you for joining us today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Annette Romans, and I'm a full-time faculty member in the elementary education program here. I'm excited to have the opportunity to initiate our presentation by giving you a little background information about the academic origins of this faculty-led Lebanon Service Learning Trip and introduce you to the members of our Holy Cross team. The education program and psychology program share common theoretical foundations and both have a high interest in neuroscience and factors that impact cognitive development. Experts in the field of education rely on the research of neuroscience and other disciplines to inform our understanding and approach to teaching and learning. These two fields are greatly intertwined. One specific area common to both psychology and education is the study of growth mindset. We will elaborate on growth mindset throughout our presentation, but put simply, growth mindset research has demonstrated the plasticity of the brain such that we now know a person can expand their intelligence. We do not have fixed IQs as was previously believed. This is especially relevant to educators as there is evidence that teaching about growth mindset can have a positive effect on one's beliefs regarding agency in their own learning and intellectual capacity. Dr. Cosette Fox, chair of the Department of Social Sciences and associate professor of psychology, has a great interest in growth mindset and has spent several years working with the education program conducting research here on campus. Her studies in growth research and growth mindset led her to consider collaborating with colleagues in her homeland of Lebanon. Dr. Fox began envisioning a service learning trip that would provide a cultural immersion experience, support outreach services to those in need in Lebanon, and offer an opportunity to extend growth mindset research to a refugee youth population. Thanks to the encouragement of the administration, especially Dr. Manta, Dr. Griffin, and Dr. Clark, we are here today to tell the story of our most excellent journey to Lebanon. Without further delay, let me introduce our team. Starting with our students, we have Kemjika Emenike, a sophomore majoring in biology and minoring in fine arts. Jacqueline Milkowski, a junior majoring in elementary education. Over here we have Alexandra Buckelmeyer, also a junior majoring in psychology, and Luke Snyder, a junior majoring in psychology and minoring in business. The other three students on our team were not able to be here today, but contributed greatly to the preparation, planning, and success of our trip, and you will see them represented in our slideshow. They are Matthew Lugerai, a senior in the final stretch of his elementary education program, Tamina Beer, a junior majoring in psychology and minoring in biology, and Nema Kwangu, a junior majoring in liberal studies. Finally, I would like to introduce our team leader, Dr. Cosette Fox.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Romans, for a great introduction of the team and of the trip. I would like to start by reading excerpts from an article I just read on Associated Press that was published on March 16, so just over a week ago, about Lebanon. Lebanon schools are currently crumbling under the weight of the country's economic collapse as the political leadership, which caused the crisis through decades of corruption and mismanagement, balks at taking any measures to resolve it. Since the meltdown began in late 2019, over 3/4 of Lebanon's 6 million people have been plunged into poverty, their assets evaporating as the currency's value shrivels and inflation rises at one of the world's highest rates. I'll stop here with the article to remind you that the economical collapse in Lebanon started in late 2019. Well, you all know around that time is when the pandemic hit the world, and Lebanon suffered greatly from the pandemic. And to make things worse, in August 2020, there was a major explosion in Beirut that devastated the country. And so within the span of 1 year, the country had gone through 3 major crises, and that brought so much suffering and trauma to its people. Back to the article. Most of the country's children have not been in school for months, many since even before teachers, who say they can no longer live on their salaries, went on strike in December. Lebanon was once known for producing a highly skilled, educated workforce, but now an entire generation is missing out on schooling, wreaking long-term damage on prospects for the country's economy and future. Teachers called their strike because their salaries in Lebanese pounds have become too low to cover rent and other basic expenses. The pound has gone from 1,500 to the dollar before the crisis to 100,000 to the dollar currently. Most teachers are now paid the equivalent of about $1 an hour, even after several raises since 2019. The problem is that grocery stores and other businesses now usually price their goods in dollars. Even before the strike, more than 700,000 children in Lebanon, many of them Syrian refugees, were not in school because of the economic crisis. With the strike, an additional 500,000 children joined their ranks, according to UNICEF. It means that we now have children ages 10, 12, 14. They're not able to even write their own names or write basic sentences. I wanted to start with this article to give you a full picture of what my country is going through these days and for the past 4 years. I was born in Lebanon during the civil war that took place throughout my childhood up to the age of 15, when we immigrated from Lebanon to Canada with my family to escape the war and to seek a better life. In the last 4 years, I was able to reconnect with my extended family in Lebanon and with my friends. And then this past June, I had the honor to go on a medical and humanitarian missions trip to Lebanon, where we extended medical care to those in need. And we also provided support and encouragement to refugee moms and their children. Speaking of refugees, more than a third of the Lebanese population is made up of Syrian, Palestinian, and Iraqi refugees. Note that Lebanon is the size of Hawaii, but it has 4 times the population of Hawaii. And so you can imagine the magnitude of the needs among Lebanese and refugee people in the middle of these crises. This medical and humanitarian trip ignited in me a fire to bring students from Holy Cross to Lebanon to make a difference. As you heard earlier, my area of research pertained to growth mindset. And so growth mindset is the belief that your intelligence and other personal traits are subject to growth with persistence and effort. And so growth mindset has been shown to bring great advantages in the education system and enhance academic performance among children of all ages. Therefore, my dear friend and colleague, Professor Romans, and I agreed to collaborate on this trip and bring students to Lebanon to teach children and educators about the concept of growth mindset. We also added humanitarian and academic components to the trip, as you'll hear about later from the students. The trip was made possible through the generous financial donation of the college and also through the much appreciated enthusiasm from our dean and his connections in Lebanon. Our college dean, Dr. Anthony Monta, had written an article about the efforts of 2 graduates from the University of Notre Dame in reviving the economy in one of the towns in Lebanon that have been through major destruction that took place during the war in 1983. Dr. Manta connected me with his friends, Naji and Jill Butros, who have been living in Lebanon for the past 14 years and working on reviving Naji's hometown called Hamdoun. Naji and Jill planted vineyards, opened a restaurant and a hotel in that town called Hotel Bellevue, all with the purpose of helping the local families. I quote, "As part of their community development orientation, they only employ local craftsmen and pickers in order to repatriate profits back into the workers of the town. They have also established a community library and also donate $1 from every bottle of wine sold in order to create a scholarship fund for Hamdoun's school children." Through this wonderful connection, we were able to secure lodging for our Holy Cross College team at the Hotel Bellevue in the beautiful town of Hamdoun. One last contributor to this trip that I must mention is my cousin, Rabia, who was instrumental to the success of this trip. He took a week off from his job as a communication engineer to stay with us every moment of the trip, acting as our driver, as our tourist guide, and keeping up with our crazy schedule. Now that I set the stage for you to hear about the details of the trip, I will pass the presentation to the students, starting with Jackie, who will be talking to you about the journey to Lebanon.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Fox, and also Professor Romans for that great introduction. So without further ado, I'd like to talk to you guys a little bit about our journey to the journey and what we originally anticipated as being a small preparatory effort of about 2 meetings actually turned into a daily commitment of gathering funds, preparing academic materials, and also fostering a strong team bond until the time of our departure to Lebanon. Our first meetings actually took place virtually over the summer, and during these meetings, Dr. Fox was explaining the significance of the trip to us. I was convinced after hearing about the way in which we as a team would have the opportunity to not only immerse ourselves in Lebanese culture, but also work to provide mental and material services to the youth of the country. We then would be asked to come up with fun ways in which we could use our unique talents and abilities to create fun learning experience for these youth that we would be encountering. Sooner than later, the school year started, as it always does, in August, and we had our first few in-person meetings. And during these meetings, we conversated about gathering supplies for our intended activities, fundraising possibilities, and we shared fellowship over traditional Lebanese foods provided by Dr. Fox. Aside from the trip's logistics, we also took a considerable amount of time researching and looking at articles concerning the Beirut blast that took place prior in August of 2020. This tragedy was caused by improper storage and safety regulations of highly flammable substance known as ammonium nitrate. The hurt was not only caused by the 200 plus deaths and 7,000 injured, but from the Lebanese government ignoring requests to rid the port of hazardous chemicals. This is where we began discussion over the desperate need of psychological intervention and education on implementing a growth mindset, which will be elaborated on throughout our presentation. So next, we began taking action on campus to raise awareness of this project, and we needed to gather funding for the supplies for each of these creative activities that we would be putting on for the youth that we would be visiting, and we did this, pictured back here, by hosting a bake sale in Ave Brew and also by setting up a popcorn stand at one of the soccer games. And we were given very generous donations. Now, aside from these efforts, we also wanted to include the rest of the campus. So we set up bins in the women's and men's halls, and we asked for students to also donate. We also received donations from a local pharmacy, which we were deeply grateful for, as many medications are either not available and or not affordable due to the serious economic decline in Lebanon at the moment. In addition, we had many great contacts in Lebanon who were able to, not just out of the generosity of their own hearts, but what is very much natural to Lebanese hospitality, provide us with their constant support and their willingness to partner with us. We truly could not have accomplished all of that we did without their help and guidance. Moving forward, I would like to pass the presentation on to Alexandra, who will share some details on our cultural immersion experience.
Thank you, Jackie. As soon as we exited the plane, we were greeted by one of Dr. Fox's cousins to help us out of the airport and to our hotel. The airport was right along the water, and we had to drive through the heart of Beirut, up a tall, windy hill to reach our hotel. Once there, we were warmly greeted by the staff, who promptly brought our luggage inside and showed us around the entire area. We were even offered to use their bicycles to tour the small town that we were in. So here you can see some of the hotel and a photo we took of Beirut at large. While we were on the trip, we visited many different cultural sites, one of which is the Jetta Grotto, which can be seen on the left right here. Jetta has been nominated for one of the 7 wonders of the world and has both an upper and lower cave. The picture on the left here shows some of the stalactites that have been formed by the immense limestone formations throughout the caves. In the lower cave, we were floated in a rowboat across the bright, clear blue water to see all that was there. Another beautiful site that we had the chance to visit is the Shrine of Our Lady of Lebanon in Harissa. This shrine has been run by the Maronite Catholics since the early 1900s, but the devotion to her goes back to the 17th century. And there's a photo right there. Here are some photos of our time in Byblos, the second oldest continuously inhabited city in the world. Byblos has been home to many cultures, including the Egyptians, Phoenicians, Assyrians, Romans, and many more. Here's a photo of the castle that we visited that dates back to the 12th century, and there's one of us walking down to the souk right here, which is an outdoor marketplace where the Lebanese sell their handmade and traditional goods. We also went to the beach and had a chance to swim in the Mediterranean Sea, some of us for the very first time. While in Byblos, as in many areas of Beirut, there were also many poor Muslim women, one of which who came walking up to us with her poor sick baby, begging for us to donate money. It was while we were stopped to grab lunch, and Dr. Fox so kindly bought her a handful of sandwiches to bring back to her family. We were also blessed to make some personal connections with the people while we were there. Here are 2 photos from Smyrna's house. It was a privilege to meet her, as she is Dr. Fox's best friend since childhood. And as Dr. Fox mentioned, we were also blessed to have her cousin Rabia be our personal tour guide and driver. He has become a great friend of ours and treated us like family. His parents also welcomed us into their home on several occasions, preparing for us grand meals that were so delicious. Here's a photo of them in the corner. And this photo right here is a photo of the youth from one of the local churches that Dr. Fox had connections with. They all came to our hotel, even though we had not known them previously, and shared a meal and games and got to hear stories as if we had been their longtime friends. They shared some of their hardships too, with their limited educational opportunities in Lebanon and how they had to search in other countries for higher education and better job opportunities. Overall, there was incredible and genuine hospitality and warmth and love that was showered over us by the Lebanese, enough to make us want to stay there. They were such good people. Now, I will pass the mic off to Kimjika to share with you a little about our academic collaborations.
On the third day of our trip, we visited the Lebanese American University's Byblos campus, also known as LAU. There, we were greeted by the very friendly and enthusiastic students who gave us a very in-depth tour of the campus, completely of their own volition. Then we gathered for a lecture by Dr. El-Khoury, a psychology professor at LAU, about the mind and memory. She highlighted the importance of having various techniques in memorization and showed the distinction between various memory types. We tested these concepts in class with memorization games, creating collaboration between the students. After Dr. El-Khoury's talk, we also attended a class on how much brain we really need by our very own Dr. Fox. We shared the class with LAU students and collaborated on in-class activities focused on the clinical side of psychology. We also explored various clinical case studies where all the patients had some form of brain damage. In all the studies, we learned how the brain's plasticity helped rewire the brain and maintain optimal function. Later that day, we had the privilege to visit the on-campus virtual reality lab. There, we learned the difference between virtual reality and augmented reality and their uses. Pictured on the right is an AR headset, here, and on the left are both VR headsets. The hope is that with this technology, complex 3D diagrams can be taught in classroom settings, like in organic chemistry and physiology. The high costs just need to be addressed before they can be widely used. Before we move on to the next slide, I just wanted to highlight this photo depicting the wall of the university's library. On this wall, both Arabic and Phoenician letters are depicted because the first alphabet was recorded in Byblos by the Phoenicians. On the sixth day of our trip, we visited the American University of Beirut, also known as AUB, which is the most prestigious school in the Middle East. We received a tour of their physiology and medicine lab, in which they were doing stem cell research and were learning how to target cancer cells for treatment. We were also shown how lab rats were used in the research of the brain. They showed us how animals went through a variety of cognitive tests, and some of the tests were even rehabilitating for the mice, and the researchers used English cake for encouragement in the testing. After testing the animals and using ethical procedures to extract the brain tissue, cross-sections of the brain were used in microscopy to show the difference between the brain. Dr. Gandour, an epidemiologist at AUB, later gave us a presentation on the importance of public health. Prior to traveling, we had read some of Dr. Gandour's research on the psychological impacts of the Beirut blast on the people. This was a great experience to extend our knowledge on the effects of the Beirut blast and the need for equitable resources for health services for all. As a biology major interested in the medical field, the academic component of the trip, especially the visit to the medical and physiology lab, was very interesting to me and helped to expand my knowledge and interest in stem cell and microbiological research. Here are some more pictures taken at AUB, and with that, I'll pass the presentation to Lucas, who will talk about research done during the trip.
First, I'll provide a little context for our research study. So Dr. Fox established a collaboration with Dr. Jessica Slider, shown here, who is a professor at Stony Brook University and a world-renowned researcher on growth mindset, who gave us permission to replicate her U.S. nationwide study where she used a growth mindset intervention to treat mental disorders in teenagers. Dr. Schleider allowed us to use her material from her intervention that was part of a nationwide project called Project Yes, which stands for Youth Empowerment and Support. We also collaborated with Lebanese faculty and students from LAU, the Lebanese American University, to translate material from Dr. Schleider's Project Yes intervention into Arabic for our study. The purpose of our study is to teach the concept of growth mindset to Lebanese and refugee adolescents to see if the intervention would have the same positive effect it had on the American teenagers. To re-elaborate on growth mindset, it is the belief that one's intelligence and abilities can be improved. It describes an outlook on life's challenges and setbacks, stating that with effort, one can overcome their challenges they face in life and improve themselves in any situation they may be in. The opposite of this is a fixed mindset, which states that one's intelligence is static and cannot be changed. Our study specifically was titled The Effect of Online Growth Mindset-Related Single-Session Interventions on Hopelessness and Agency in Arabic Adolescents as it relates to adverse childhood experiences. We had participants fill out the ACE scale, which scans for traumatic childhood experiences such as childhood abuse or divorced parents, the MFQ short, which measures negative feelings, and the Beck hopelessness scale, the self-hate scale, a perceived control scale, and a change in hopelessness scale, which are self-explanatory. We carried out this study in 2 locations: the Menard Youth Center and St. Ellie's Catholic School. Here is shown the page that our participants would see before they started the Project Yes intervention. Circled is the Arabic section that was generously translated for us by the faculty and students at LAU. At Menard Youth Center, we, as a group, prepared 4 different rooms, each containing a different activity for the students to complete. Students were allowed to choose which room they would attend, and one of these rooms contained tablets which the Project Yes intervention would be completed on. More details on the other 3 rooms will be shared later by Jackie. Our second research location was St. Ellie's Catholic School, a French and Arabic school located near our hotel. At this location, Alexandra and I entered a room of 5th through 8th graders and explained the Project Yes intervention to them. We then provided any help with the intervention the students may have needed. While Alexandra and I carried out the research study, the rest of the group was generously helped to homemade snacks prepared by the faculty of St. Ellie's. Our analysis of the results found that the Project Yes intervention led to a significant increase in perceived control and hope, along with a significant decrease in self-hate, showing the effectiveness of the Project Yes intervention among not only American teenagers, but with Lebanese teenagers as well. We are currently in the process of writing a manuscript in collaboration with Dr. Jessica Schleider to publish our data. We hope to continue the study to help more Lebanese and refugee children in the future. I'll now pass the presentation back to Jackie, who will explain the service learning portion of our trip.
So to elaborate on our service learning experience that we had in Lebanon, I will take us back to the Menard Youth Center. So we provided the Menard Youth Center with humanitarian aid in a few other locations as well, but we did this in slightly different ways. Here pictured behind me, we have some Holy Cross students as well as some of the staff members at the Menard Youth Center. And they were gathered all around to hear Dr. Fox's presentation on growth mindset before the center opened to the kids that day. And this piece here was quite essential, as it is important for educators to constantly be in collaboration with one another to broaden one's funds of knowledge, especially on such an important topic that will be concerning their students, and in this case, the center's youth. After the presentation, we then would split into our 4 different rooms that Lucas detailed earlier, and all of us had been working through meetings and time set apart to set up these activities. So one room did consist of the study with the tablets, another had arts and crafts, and an additional one had music. And the 4th session, we actually gave the kids the opportunity to write letters to their future self and spark a conversation about that. So that's what we did at the Menara Youth Center. Here's an image of what one of the rooms looked like. On the left over here, we have the letter writing session, and behind me is the arts and crafts room. Next location was at a local church in which Dr. Fox and her friend Smyrna had connections with. The church's primary demographic is made up of Syrian refugees who had to move from their home, but this was due to war and civil unrest. But not just that, they had to do it with young children at the same time. So while we were playing games, we were coloring, we were taking Polaroid photos, and we were painting with the kids, Smyrna was actually inside the church giving a presentation to the families, just giving them resources and locations for them and their children in the new country. And it was very touching to give these kids the gift of a photograph, as this is not something that is very common for them to have of themselves. So that was very wonderful. Our third form of humanitarian aid, and another very important part of the trip, was being able to intermingle with some of the locals in Lebanon, and we did this through the form of home visits. And we met this lovely woman pictured here after we had attended a Maronite Catholic Church service. Father Basham actually recommended that we visit her, and it was great. We were able to give her some medications that she was in need of, sit down, have a conversation with her, get to know her personally, know about her life in Lebanon, and get to know about her family. I also wanted to mention before moving on that any of the supplies that we had taken with us to Lebanon, we donated to all of these different places and partners that we had established while visiting as a way to let the kids continue the learning, continue the fun. So, yeah. And this moves into our additional conversation of the importance of our Catholic identity that Alexandra will talk more on.
Thanks again, Jackie. As a distinctly Catholic school, and many of us being Catholic ourselves, it has been important to bring that faith with us as we went to Lebanon. Every meeting leading up to the trip consisted of prayer, and we experienced the faith a lot while we were there. The Sunday after we arrived, we went to Mass at a Maronite Catholic church, Mar Gerges, within walking distance of our hotel. It was a beautifully rich experience and much like the Roman Rite, but with a few different traditions. The music was beautiful, and it was all in Arabic and Aramaic. Also, while at the Lady of Lebanon, underneath her statue is a beautiful perpetual adoration chapel, seen here, that we spent time praying in. We also were shown an ancient little chapel in the cove while at the Lebanese American University, right here. And this up here is a photo of Mar Gerges, the Maronite church, on our way there. And here again are some more photos of the Shrine of Our Lady of Lebanon, including all the beautiful trees and the large cross that lit up the sky. While those were all intentional Catholic spaces that we visited, throughout the city, while driving and visiting homes, we saw many statues of both Mary and the saints. Multiple homes that we visited had little shrines out in the entranceway, as seen here on the left. Also, it's hard to see, but there's a statue of Saint Therese on the side of a street corner in the upper right corner of our photos. And the gigantic statues seen below were being sold there. Most street corners and roundabouts had saint statues on them, emphasizing the Catholic presence amongst the divided culture. Faith has helped the people of Lebanon persevere through the hardships, and it was a blessing to see how the faith can cross language and cultural barriers. Our trip started out with a research idea, but because of our Catholic identity, we could not leave it at that. The Congregation of Holy Cross's mission is to educate both the minds and the hearts. So what better way to do that than go out and serve those in need? That is where the humanitarian effort of our project came in, and it opened our eyes beyond the privilege that we have seen here in the United States. And as Dr. Marco Clark says, Holy Cross College cultivates engaged scholars, courageous citizens, virtuous leaders, and passionate disciples. And this is what Holy Cross strives for, and this is what I truly believe that we grew into during this trip. And now we have the immense desire to go back and serve the community once more. We're hoping to make this trip possible again this coming year. So thank you all for being here and for listening. And now we will begin our question and answer session before the final words of our professors. Professor Romans will come around the room as you raise your hand for questions, and you may direct it to any of us specifically or all of us in general. Thank you.
I'm really curious about your findings, and you might still be analyzing the data. It sounds like you did a randomly assigned randomization. Are you comparing the 4 different rooms in your study, so that the students were allowed to kind of self-select to 4 different conditions? I assume you're comparing those conditions.
Yes, so that was a crucial part of the study, is that the students would make an intentional choice, the subjects would make an intentional choice to choose the study, and so that's why we had all these other rooms with all these other exciting ideas, just as exciting. And so the ones that chose the room, it's because they wanted to be part of the study. So Dr. Schneider had, in her success, in her online interventions, she had made it very clear that there should be some personal choice and investment. Otherwise, the intervention won't make a difference. And so we did not have a control group. It was a within subject design study. So we had the pre and post collection of data, and then we saw a difference, an increase in hope and agency, right? Agency. And decrease in self-hate post relative to the pre. Yeah.
So, and a follow-up question that's really interesting. So you know
Now, I would have to know. In the growth mindset, I noticed that one of the fixed categories was intellect, right? I'm smart.
Yeah.
Self-statement.
Right.
And then the other is I try hard.
Yeah.
And as I'm sure you know, men are often told they're smart, women are often told they try hard. And, I like to tell women they're smart and they try hard. So, did you find any gender differences in either pre or post intervention?
That's a great question. We have not seen any gender differences in this set of data. However, a few other studies have. And they haven't related it to social, cultural approaches to men versus women. However, Carol Dweck, the person who put forth that whole theory, does relate growth mindset development to how parents speak to their children. And so there's probably some sexism that goes on, and that's socially built in us as parents, but also it's that whole concept of not praising the traits, rather the process and the ability to persevere and the effort in parenting that can lead to growth mindsets. Instead of telling your child, no matter if they're, a boy, if it's a boy or a girl, you're smart, you're wonderful, you can do, excellent things in life just because you're smart and you're born smart. And that actually, those kinds of comments, even though as parents we like to say them, they actually implement a fixed mindset in the child because they feel like they have to measure up to that, and they're scared to try and try hard things. So, but that I haven't seen a lot. The research is all very new, so there hasn't been a lot on gender differences, but I could see how that would be embedded in how parenting takes place. That'd be great. Yes, that'd be great. Yeah, maybe we can all go make a presentation there. That'd be wonderful. Yeah, that's great.
In the same way that Chrisette was referring to, Dr. Fox was referring to parent talk, that's true for educators too.
Yes.
And it's so important for us to expose our future educators to growth mindset research so that they are using the type of talk that's going to encourage the growth mindset of students.
You might actually have here the reason why we see fewer young men.
Yes.
Right? They feel that they can't.
Right, and also fewer women in the STEM fields and engineering fields is because there's this social stigma that, boys are good at that and girls are good at literature or qualitative stuff, which is not true. Yeah, and that whole gender differences, by the way, about math, girls being less good at math than boys and girls being better in languages than boys, actually they've disqualified that completely through research. Once they took that, trying to look for the right word, that stigma, if I'll just use that word for now, off. When they told the subjects, this is not true, girls are just as good at math as boys, they performed equally as good. Yeah. Thank you. That's a great perspective.
Thanks, you guys. I wanted to make one comment and then have a question for the students. So actually this trip itself was sort of an example of growth mindset for the college. And one thing, since it is the inauguration day, just a story that the students may not know is one of the first decisions that Dr. Clark had was whether we were going to have this trip. Because, Lebanon had, as you alluded to, it had been in the news, and there's all these state department ratings, and your professors did their due diligence, and Dr. Clark said, well, let's look at it, and then if there's a way to make this happen, let's go. We can think about having a responsible, safe trip to a place where even perhaps in another mindset, you might not be able to do it. So that was kudos, and I think that this will continue in the future.
Yes,
so,
thank you, Dr. Clark.
Because, when you bring things to the president, sometimes the president who doesn't have a growth mindset is just like, risk, no, shut it down. But that didn't happen.
Yeah.
You guys had this great experience. So my question then is, as we go forward, here you are in a public forum, maybe if each of the students could say, you obviously were aware that you weren't going to like Cancun for spring break. What was your experience? Were you a little nervous? And then being there, did you feel like you overcame any sort of border or barrier to your own fears?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I have a little bit of background in just Middle Eastern culture. A month or two prior to going to Lebanon, I was in Israel. So this was my second time in a Middle Eastern country, so I had been accustomed to some of the cultural practices, the landscape, what things were looking like on both more in Israel being there is more of the Jewish community style, and then what you have the Palestinian territories. The Palestinian territories, or Palestine itself, areas like Bethlehem, looked a lot like Lebanon. And I was happy to see that carried over. And the foods were similar, cultures were similar between the two. And it was just, I was happy to experience that again. I didn't know if I ever would get that opportunity again, and I did here, which was great. And so going in, I had a little bit more preparation. But what I didn't get to experience as much in Israel, because I was taking a formal course and studying, I didn't get to experience intermingling with locals and meeting, family members of someone that we knew here at Holy Cross, and going into someone's household and sitting down and sharing a meal and just talking and mingling and getting to know people so seamlessly and so naturally. I had never had that experience before this trip. And it really is, I would say, life-changing for me. And I speak on behalf of my team here as well. So that's my take on the situation.
I had never been to a Arabic Middle Eastern culture before, but I have been to close to 16 other countries. So I knew travel, and I wasn't too afraid about that. And then the fact that I trust Dr. Fox a lot and knew that if she said that her family was going to be there, going to help us, keep us safe, I was like, okay, I can trust that. I believe that. My dad, on the other hand, well, he was really worried. Don't know how he ever let us go, but I'm grateful for it. So it was a wonderful experience, and I second the fact that we were welcomed very much by her family and getting to have those personal connections. It was really beautiful. Do you have anything to add?
Well, I personally had never actually traveled out of the country before this trip, so I was naturally a little nervous about things, and I didn't really know what to expect, but I feel like as soon as I met Dr. Fox's family at the airport, they came to pick us up, and they were so friendly to us. I immediately felt at ease in this country, and I knew that everything was gonna go all right, and it went pretty well in the end, so it's pretty good.
So, well, first off, Dr. Fox and Professor Romans, thank you for what you did to put together this trip and the planning process, and for taking a chance, on our students and providing them with such an extraordinary opportunity. And thank you to the students for your outstanding presentation. I had a chance to see you all do this when you first returned, and it's just remarkable to me to see even the evolution and your own growth from that time until now, right? And so remarkable. This is such a great example of what I hope to see more of at the college, where you had this global immersive experience in working with people very different than ourselves, and who are on the peripheries, have experienced, due to circumstance of where they were born and live, beyond their control, marginalized in so many ways. And then this combination of student and faculty-led research. I mean, this is the essence of high-impact teaching practices in today's academia. My question goes to the question of growth mindset, fixed mindset, right? We live in a world today, certainly what these students have experienced in these last number of years, this post-COVID world, where the need and the attention towards mental wellness is so critical. What do you see, maybe Dr. Fox, this is for you, what do you see for us as a college, you as a department chair, as we move forward in helping to shape and form these hopeful disciples, but how might we be able to support them by using what we've learned about growth mindset and fixed mindset? We see the programs in the future, we see the majors, maybe even how do we think Holy Cross, because I believe Holy Cross can be an exemplar in an area like this. How might we accomplish that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Definitely, I think it all starts with the professors, with the educators at this institution. So definitely, I would love to have more conversations with my colleagues and just encourage that mindset in our teaching. And then from there, of course, it will flow from the professors to the students, but also maybe have seminars for the students, which we have done through Brother Bill's great efforts Professor Romans and I have collaborated with him in the last 2 years to provide a growth mindset session for all incoming freshmen through the IDSD 110 course. But yeah, I'm open to more discussion. Sorry, this turned off on me. So I'm open to more discussion with administration to see how we can expand that. The online intervention that Schleider has put together, and her study is published. Yes, it looks like it. Okay, it's yellow, so I'm not sure it's going to turn on. I don't know how to do it. I'll just speak louder. Okay, here, I think I got it. The online intervention that Dr. Schleider put together, it's really just half an hour to 40 minutes. But it really makes up for the lack of mental health support for students or teenagers, and also maybe the accessibility of that, or maybe the lack of finances, whatever it is. So it would be great to promote that on campus. So if the students feel for one reason or the other they can't use our counseling service, which does a great job, at least they'll have that online access for free. And it doesn't do as good of a job as like 13 sessions of in-person counseling, but it definitely has advantages. That, as I think I mentioned, that her article was published in the Nature Journal, and it was a statewide intervention. And we, to be honest with you, our study in Lebanon was not even a perfect study because of all the adaptations and the changes that happen in the translation. We had some problems with that because there's formal Arabic and there's spoken Arabic, and Syrian refugees have a different dialect than Lebanese, and so we had to use the formal Arabic, and some of the words and terms were not understood by the kids who were like somewhere 8 years old, 10 years old, because formal Arabic is not really spoken that much. It's taught in school, so we just revisited the translation because we'd like to continue the study. But all that to say, even with those limitations to the study, and with a small sample size of 60 subjects, we still saw an increase in hope and decrease in self-hate and increase in agency within just a 40-minute online intervention. So that would be great to also bring to campus. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, yeah. Oh, there we go.
Is this working? Great. So just kind of tagging on that, I've really enjoyed talking to you over the past year about this project. But though I've been answering my question so far, but there was one that came to me within our own elementary ed program. Has there been any discussions about actually implementing this with schools? Right? We talked about it with the educators, but maybe with our local schools.
I missed the end of that question.
So has there been any thought about actually doing the same study here outside of college and the grade schools?
That was, there was one small study done already, and I think maybe it's possible that we can revisit that with some of our local school partners. We did work with quite a few schools in placing our elementary ed majors in the classroom, and so there's great potential for us to partner with some of these local community organizations.
I just want to add to that we did do 2 studies, one at the private school that my kids go to and one at the high school in South Bend, but we did not do the intervention. That was like 3-4 years ago when we had not developed our own intervention, and so we just measured mindset with its growth rates in the students and related that to their math grades, some standardized testing that they had just taken, and we did find very interesting correlations, and we published actually those papers. It's right by my door. However, now that we have our own intervention that we've been using, Professor Romans and I, with the incoming freshmen, and we're actually working on that data to publish it also, it would be great to bring that to the schools. We just haven't gotten there yet, but great question, great idea. Yeah.
So some schools have adopted growth mindset programs, so there are many local schools that are already using that because of the research that shows how effective it is to present that growth mindset intervention to students.
Bring it to your institution.
We have a short video to show that is also available through Holy Cross College's YouTube channel. And so we'll just show that, and then following that, there will be a QR code presented on the screen. If anybody would like to hear more about our daily activities, you can use that QR code to access the running blog that we kept while we were in Lebanon.
Yes, and do you want to tell them about the stuff outside?
And we do have some artifacts outside along the window that we brought back from Lebanon for you to take a look at as well.
Would you like to do your conclusions about what
you
after
show
the
the
video?
video?
Okay. So we'll do the video and then we'll do the conclusion or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, we'll do that.
2 minutes.
Yeah. No, I think one more.
Cross college professors and students journeyed to Lebanon during fall break of 2022. The group embarked on a remarkable research and learning experience in Lebanon to see firsthand how strong and passionate people can revitalize and grow the local culture. The team stayed in a quaint place that offered amazing scenery and breathtaking views. One excursion took them to visit the American University. They toured campus and used stem cell and behavioral research labs. During this time, they were enlightened by research showing the importance of public health and mental health in relation to times of disaster. The group enjoyed time at a new elementary school and worked at a youth center that provides services for local youth, predominantly refugees. Some of the activities performed included mindfulness and art, growth mindset journaling, and research programming. It was a magical week, filled with many unique academic moments and memories that will last a lifetime.
So as we wrap up our presentation, we would like to note that the story of our journey is only partially conveyed through these images and our comments today. While our time was spent, as Alexandra said, overcoming linguistic and cultural barriers to make powerful connections, we were greatly moved by the images of poverty and desperation we encountered in the streets of Lebanon. We heard stories of disheartened young adults who did not have the opportunities to pursue college and career pathways in Lebanon. And we saw Syrian refugees walking the streets carrying sick children, despairing for their bleak futures. We came home with new perspectives of our calling to serve others, to pray for the needs of so many around the world lacking the basics like electricity, education, food, and hope. Lebanon is a beautiful country, and the people were extremely gracious and welcoming to us. But as is true of many places we might visit, our perspective is forever changed. We came back with a wider view of human conditions of those less privileged.
and a much greater understanding of our own lessons. We thank you for letting us share our story, and as mentioned, we will put up a QR code that has a link to a blog of our, that was kept on a daily basis while we were there. And we wish you all a wonderful weekend celebrating our new dynamic president, Dr. Marco Clark, and all the outstanding academic, spiritual, and community aspects of Holy Cross College. Thank you.
Everybody did good. Good job. Thank you. You were the most natural out there. You too. You too. Yeah. Yeah. Just not my sister.
I looked at my paper too much.
I did speech and debate when I was in high school. So I've had a lot of problems, and I like to do public speaking.
Yeah, you are good at it.
I also